Alright, so with the end of the year coming up, what do I got to record for this one? Hell no! We ain't going over that one. Okay, that might work. I mean, there's no controversies attached to it, right? Well, it's my funeral.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Christian here, and it's time for a new Eonic review. And today we're going to be touching base on my first Pokemon review since, well, I've been wanting to do one, and Sword and Shield is basically the best choice ever. I'm going to mostly be touching on Sword because that's the one I own, but Shield and Sword basically don't have much difference other than Pokemon, so it's going to be the same through and through. This review is going to be as much as I can talk about. I'm not going to try to spoil anything from the story, but there are going to be some things I have to touch bases on. So I will do my best not to spoil anything. One detail I do want to mention is I have been sitting back and trying to see what Nintendo has been releasing, plus also seeing what other YouTubers have been releasing for information about this game. Because even though it took me, I think, a week to beat this game, there's stuff coming out that players are finding that you wouldn't have found on your first playthrough. And we'll touch base on stuff like that. But the big things I want to mention is they're the three YouTubers that I was using for help, and I kind of want to start doing this from now on in reviews or anything like that. Austin John Plays, very good YouTuber when it comes to Pokemon content, and especially for Sword and Shield dues, so go find him. He was very helpful when it came to looking at stuff about Dynamaxing, when it came to stuff about easy grinds or anything like that, where you were having trouble evolving a certain Pokemon, he had it. Poketips, another good one as well, especially since he had content about things you could do after the game. And Hoops and Hip Hop was also a very good one too, because if you wanted any form of information about what's going on in Sword and Shield, or who this is, or what's going to happen, he's another one. Other than that, I want to just start off, so we're going to start off with the story. So, Pokemon has had a basic story structure basically since the first game, and it wasn't until the 5th generation where we got more of a detailed story. Not saying that every game's story hasn't had some interest, but when it comes down to collect 8 badges, become champion. That's the simple story. And what I think the Gamefreak wanted to do with this game was that they wanted to take you back to that same world, but also have a story element going on the same structure. The problem that I see with this idea is you made the second part of the story an afterthought, in my opinion. You took the fun part of your game, which is experiencing the story while doing the adventure, and made the adventure the more important thing, which hurts the story that you wanted to tell. So, if anything, what I would have done was I would have had the character, always going for the gym challenges, but maybe having a few times to stop and focus on the events that are actually going on, and not be told by an NPC, don't worry about it, go keep doing your gym challenge. Because in the first game, when we faced Giovanni, we were the ones who took him down. Not the champion. No, it was us. That's how I wanted it to be approached. I don't care if our Pokemon would have been knocked out. Especially since later in the game, in the endgame content, there's a lot that we actually do because we're the champion now. So, that's the important part. Don't take us away from the story just because you want us to focus on the gym challenges. Now, for the challenges though, they were a nice change, but my biggest thing, they weren't what I thought they were. You were so close. I understand that gym challenges are supposed to be interesting puzzles or interesting ideas that the gym leaders made up, so that way players can, traverse their gym and get to them. The only thing that bothers me is I really, really wish we could just have a competitive gym where basically you have to go through people constantly to get to the gym leader, and it's a trial. I'm sorry, that would be fun. I would love a trial because at least that would push your team, plus also it would ask yourself, are you ready for this? Can you handle which gym leader is about to show up? The only two gym leaders who I was, oh god, shocked with was the final gym leader and the fire gym leader. Not because I picked Groki, because his gym requires you to catch Pokemon or defeat Pokemon, and I was too concerned that I was going to lose because I didn't want to catch any of the Pokemon in there. So I was sitting there like, what's the fucking point? And Rayhan's gym is irritating because you didn't know it was a double gym. Like, how is anybody supposed to know this? Shouldn't there be something telling you his gimmick is doubles? It was hard to tell until it happened. And then when he threw out his first two Pokemon, for once I saw a gym leader who's actually smart. And it freaked me out because it's the 8th gym leader. I would have had him be the 5th one, just to throw you off. Other than that, I don't think anything else was wrong with the gym challenges. For me personally, I liked the stuff back in Alola with the island challenges, just because they were something different. I don't care if people didn't like the totem Pokemon. It was something different. And that's what I'm looking for. Don't keep going back to the same formula. There's a reason that this game could fall on its face because of you doing the same formula. Now, with the new mechanic though, where we're focusing on Dynamaxing, my thing with Dynamaxing is the plot for it is just basically boring. Okay, Pokemon can now project themselves as giants and have kaiju-esque battles. Whoop-de-fucking-do. There was no reason I felt I should Dynamax my Pokemon, even though I do it. Because every time I was fighting somebody, I never felt like I needed to Dynamax against that person because I could just one-shot them with my Dynamax. Hell, I think there's one Pokemon in the game I one-shotted without Dynamaxing. And he was Dynamax, so I was confused. So, my thing is, if you're going to make Dynamaxing the plot, kind of like how you tried to make Mega Evolution the plot of Generation 6, do some interesting things with it. I feel one part in the game you do a great job where you show that Dynamaxing is not a choice. But after that, you don't mess with it anymore. It's so irritating. Now, I'm getting tired of this trope because I must say this right now. The evil team not being the evil team. When I first saw Team Yell, I knew they weren't the bad guys. I knew it. I'm getting tired of that. Guys, I get it. They're supposed to be rebels and they're supposed to be punks. But when it comes down to actually describing their characters, they are jokes. They are nobodies. What the hell were they actually doing? You don't understand now. The reason Team Rocket, Team Magma, or any other fucking team before Plasma worked was because every single team had some fucking goal. And the reason I say before Plasma is because Plasma was the one who ramped up everything. And made it worse because no team can now beat Plasma because they wanted to basically, Pokemon are no longer chained. Now Team Yell's gimmick is, we want this one girl to win. I didn't feel like they did anything. Hell, the only time I feel like they do something is when they lock you out of the fucking 6th or I think it's 7th gym leader. It's so stupid. And the worst part is I said this before, I'm getting tired of them not being the bad guys. This happened in Alola. I knew that Team Skull wasn't the bad guys in that game, and guess what fucking happened? They weren't the bad guys. They were working with the fucking bad guys, which was the Aether Foundation. And in this game, we find out the, quote, obvious person was the bad guy, which I'm not even going to talk about because it's so fucking irritating. Stop doing that. Stop it. Just make a bad team. It's not that hard. I feel like you guys have lost your touch when it comes to bad guys. Just make a bad team. Fuck. Last thing I'm going to talk about before I move on to gameplay is the endgame content. I was actually surprised there was endgame content because most Pokemon games really just have go find this legendary and do it. This one actually had some interesting endgame content when it came to catching your box art legendary, dealing with two very, very peculiar characters, and also dealing with basically getting cards for certain gym leaders. That's kind of cool. There's that. There's also the battle tree. There's events you can do after the game. But I also feel like the game needs more. Like, Pokemon has never had a great endgame, and that sucks. The battle tree is by far the only thing that has an endgame, and it doesn't stand too well. And that's my biggest thing. I really wish this game had a legit New Game Plus. And I will talk about one thing. They do actually have a way for you to finally play this game again, which is smart, but dumb at the same time. Until Pokemon Home comes out, I don't actually know if it's going to be worth it, because no. Basically, the endgame content is really well done here. I think I mentioned it was Poketips, and I think Hoops and Hip Hop both go more in detail on the actual endgame content, so look for them too because they do a better job here, and they touch better on it because, you know, I don't want to spoil anything. So if you do want to look at the endgame content, go look at those two. Now, let's move on to gameplay. So the mechanics have basically stayed the same, which is very good for Pokemon because you don't want to start changing the mechanics too much. You don't want to overwhelm somebody with the mechanics, because if you overwhelm them, they're going to be like, oh wait, this is not the same game anymore. The best part is that finally the tutorials are skippable. You have no idea when Leon walked up to me and went, alright, I'm going to teach you how to catch up. Well, you have a Pokemon already. Shit. Alright, cool, you're good. And left. I couldn't believe the tutorial was skippable. Oh my god, you have no idea how much that's amazing. Finally, a character has realized you know how to play this game. And yes, they ask you in certain events, do you know about this? And they even have a part where you can skip the cutscenes of the game if you've already seen it, if you're just basically playing the game over. So, yes, thank you. Finally, you listened to a complaint that we've had. Thank you for making the tutorials skippable, because that's the best part. We can finally play this game multiple times if we felt like it and not have to drug through the tutorial. I already mentioned this, by the way, with Dynamaxing, but Dynamaxing was kind of pathetic. Basically, you make your Pokemon bigger, you have brand new attacks, but it doesn't matter because in all theory and seriousness, the attacks are just the same. You're just doing higher damage to a thing. I think there's 2 Dynamax battles that, honest to God, really were not worth it. Like, they were tough, but once you figured out what you needed to do, the Pokemon were easy. I already went into it with the gym challenges that they were kind of underwhelming because, like, the first gym challenge with, I forgot his name. The first gym challenge with the grass gym leader was an interesting one, especially since you see him play with a, what's it called? A Wooloo. So it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of cute. You know, he probably is a farmer, so that's funny. But over time, I just kind of felt like these gym challenges were, again, just a joke. They're nothing. They're nothing. If anything, the fairy gym leader was the only one that threw me off because when it happened, I was like, the fuck? Okay, apparently I might become a gym leader now. That's actually what I thought. The wild area. Now, I'm going to say this because this is important. Nintendo and Game Freak really screwed over the wild area. But it's not their fault. I would have never shown the wild area the way they did in the commercials, where they were showing it off and making it look like the game is this, that the world is basically... Don't do that anymore. Stop that. If you're not going to give us a open world Pokemon game, don't do that. The wild area was that tease to an open world Pokemon game. If you're going to give us one, do it. Don't tease us. Because the wild area is basically what we've wanted. I want a game where I can just say, I want to go to that town and have to trudge through a ton of Pokemon. And hell, it was the most interesting thing because during my second playthrough, I've realized there are Pokemon in the wild area who I didn't even realize could appear in the wild area. And I'm so happy now that I know they can appear in the wild area because I felt dumb that I tried to catch them later in the game. So yes, the wild area, great, but you basically ruined it by trying to make the game that in the commercials. One thing they also took from Let's Go, which, great change, I love this change, is that Pokemon are roaming now. This allows you to plan your positions and where you're going. There's a lot of times you will run into a Pokemon, and to be honest, it's because they're so small you can actually miss them. Now there are some that are kind of a joke, because like, I'm going to use Joltik as an example. That thing's only like 2 feet tall. And yet when you look at it in the grass, there's no way in hell you should be able to see that. Just saying. But even still, there are some changes I would do. I would actually state, if you're going to do this where Pokemon are noticeable in the overworld, take their sizes into actual account. If Rhydon states that, and I'm just guessing because I don't remember its Pokedex, but if it says it's 10 feet tall, it should literally look 10 feet tall. You do this great with Onix, Steelix, and other big-ass Pokemon, but when it comes to the little ones, I want the little ones to actually look tiny, because then you can use the grass animation of them hiding in the grass, and the grass is moving, instead of the actual Pokemon. That would throw people off. So use animations to your advantage. If you know a Pokemon's size is small, maybe use the grass for that instead. That way we'd have no idea what's in there, but we know it's something small. Dens. They're a very good, nice touch, but they have a notable issue. The notable issue is that if people start farming them like they have been, you can get level 100 Pokemon early in the game, and that's no fun. But it is the new mechanic, so I kind of understand it. If anything, when it comes to dens and raid battles, they're fun, they're a great new mechanic, I like them. Hell, they're even helpful when you're trying not to accidentally, I forget what the grinding is called, but basically grind your Pokemon up with the wrong EVs or IVs. But also the fact that you can get a level 100 Pokemon before maybe the first gym, and some people have done it, by the way, so don't even tell me they haven't. It's pretty dumb. The last thing I want to talk about are technical records. These things threw me off when I first got one, because I was like, what the fuck is a technical record? Or TR, to be honest. And then when I saw what it actually is, it's just the old TMs. But what they've done with the technical records, I think hurts technical machines more than they used to. See, technical machines' biggest draw is that they had special moves in them that you could reuse over and over again. Where TRs, on the other hand, kind of took those moves that are made technical machines worth it. So I'm not saying all TMs are bad. There's not a vast amount, but there's some that when you see them on the list, you're going to just overlook them. Why? Because a technical record is going to have the move you want. And actually, as far as I know, I think there might be 3. I could be wrong, but 3 or 4 of them that I know for a fact I didn't use. Other than that, almost all TRs I tried to use, if compatible. Because if I had a Pokemon that couldn't use it, it just stayed in my thing, but that was because I didn't have a Pokemon. other than that, the gameplay is where this game shines. It's still a great Pokemon game, and I think for right now, this is what we're looking for when it comes to a Pokemon game. Now, the graphics they're not perfect. I am still waiting to see what this game can do, and to be honest, I'm looking forward to the Gen 4 remakes. You know they're coming. Don't pretend like they're not coming. Gamefreak is basically hinting that they're coming. But I can't wait for those because I have a feeling those are going to be where the graphics are going to shine. But the graphics are pretty good. I think if anything, the people that are getting upset about them, I want to address this right now. You've got to understand something. Pokemon is a yearly franchise, and even though Game Freak did reuse shit, I'm not as irritated. There's only a few times I got irritated, like with, I'm using Score Bunny in my new playthrough right now, and one of the things that happened is I believe it has the move Double Kick, and it's boring. When I know the Pokemon actually has a kicking animation, I really wish they would have just used the kicking animation. So, I just think that is what's happening right now, and I think they want to innovate on the game, but the crunch time, it's not really there. And who knows, I may be wrong, they might actually be busting it out, because I did hear that Pokemon Sword and Shield was being worked on when Sun and Moon were being announced. So understand that is another detail as well. They might have just reused stuff from Sun and Moon because they had the ability. Draw distance. This is only noticeable in the wild area, but draw distance is something that's new to the Pokemon world, but becomes a problem when you are roaming an area and the draw distance basically looks bad. It's new to Pokemon, so I'm not going to be too critical on it, but you need to work on it. Here's an important detail. How about you give us something to allow us to change the draw distance? I really think a great idea would be give us some goggles. You've done it before, where we can basically adjust the draw distance, just like how you gave us earphones that can adjust the sound. We'll talk about that later. So yeah, I would say that those are mostly the graphical issues, because yes, the Pokemon still look the same, but again, they're not going to change much. You're not going to see much difference just yet. This is the first game on the console that is a mainline series. Give it time. I'm waiting for that Gen 4 remake because that's where I think they're going to shine more. Now let's move on to sound. The music in this game is actually really cool because it knows when to actually drop. A great example is when you are in the wild area. Those bagpipes, oh god, they're noticeable. But they're only noticeable until you get the earphones. The earphones fix all of the sound issues in this game. And that's a tiny detail I'm going to mention. Never make this a thing you get from an NPC other than your mother. Oh my god. I'm not kidding. You make sure your mom, you're the professor, somebody gives this to you early. Don't do this again. Because Dynamaxing, that fucking cry is loud as hell. And it's terrible because I was trying to play this game while my roommates were sleeping. You have no idea how loud the Dynamaxing is when I have my volume at 2 on the TV. So understand, you made that shit too loud. So make sure you give that thing to us. Because especially if you give it to us early, we can experience the music in this game so much better, especially when you use those headphones to adjust things. My favorite was the gym leader tracks. These hit you like automatically once you actually get into it. There are 2 tracks that play. I believe one is with the 7th gym leader and the other one is with the 8th gym leader, Rayhan. And that's the important part I want to bring up. I love the tracks for them. I think it's different. I don't remember, but I believe they should be different tracks off the top of my head. But when it comes to the gym tracks in general, they were fucking amazing. I loved them. This is an irritating thing because of that 7th gym leader, but in general, just the cutscenes. you need to put voice acting in the game. And it doesn't have to be major voice acting at first. You know for a fact that there's a Japanese and an English dub of the anime. We know for a fact you're working on it. And we know for a fact you pick these damn actors out before you get the show running. What is telling me that you cannot take these actors and go, hey, can you record a few lines, especially for these characters? Because you know this, Rose is going to appear in the anime. Orleana is going to appear in the anime. The Champion is going to appear in the anime. All these characters are going to appear in the anime. The only one who is not is your character, and maybe... No, again, Hop's going to appear too. Basically, all these characters are going to appear. So if a scene has a character that is a cutscene, have that character speak. Have that character talk. This animation is stupid. This is dumb. And it irritates me because it's unsettling. You cannot sit there with silence. And one of the things SK was referencing was, why don't they just use the da-da-da-da-da-da sound? I don't think they want to. I think that sounds bad for this generation, so use voice acting instead. I don't want to compare Persona to this, but Persona does the greatest job when it comes to their cutscenes. The characters talk through the cutscenes, and then during dialogue scenes, they maybe say 1 to 2 words to maybe a sentence. That's all you have to do for the recording of voice acting. That's it! Afterwards, don't do any more. Flaws. First off, game was too predictable. Once stuff started happening, you could basically breeze through the game. The villains were obvious, and the gym challenges weren't as bad or thing. It has some hand-holding in it, and even though I mentioned you can skip the tutorial, there are some tutorials that just, they don't go away, and it just... Plus, the game has a very bad directive narrative. Like, if you want to leave the grass gym leader and don't challenge him yet, they won't let you, because apparently Team Yell is doing something up front, up ahead. Why? But I'm also going to state that this has been happening since the first generation, because Brock, if you ever remember, the guy would not let you leave until you faced Brock anyways, so, I mean, yeah. The voice acting, I mentioned, but I'm just going to say it again, this is definitely a big flaw. You need to put something in. Something has to be here. I don't care if you rip off Banjo-Kazooie and just do do-do-do-do, oh, just sound. You need something here. And the lack of explaining things. The lack of explaining how to use certain items. The lack of the fishing rod being in your backpack. The lack of the fact that you don't know how a box works. The lack of how the card maker works. You get a dialogue text, but most people accidentally skip it. And then there's nothing in the help menu to look it up. Rotom is right there. Why don't you use Rotom as an actual guide? Because the phone doesn't help. Do this from now on. Use the damn Rotom to your advantage for things like that. That way the developer can do things that makes the game better for those who've never played Pokemon. But at the same time, helps people who've never learned the game. Or never learned new details about the game. So, yeah. All in all, Pokemon Sword and Shield basically is a really good game for the new Pokemon genre or generation. And it's got me excited for whatever comes. I will mention one thing. I don't want a sequel to this game. I think that would look really bad. That's why I'm looking forward to Generation 4 possibly getting its remakes. I think those would make more sense, and I think those would also solve the Dexa issues. And that is one thing I want to address before I give this game its score. People who are very upset about Dexit and all this stuff, you need to stop. You've got to understand right now, they are right. We're about to get close to 1,000 Pokemon in this game. And as much as I'd love to be able to say I'd like to take my favorite Pokemon over to the game, I don't even use my favorites on occasions. I actually use new Pokemon in the generation. It's only when I want to fill up the decks is when I bring them over. And if the decks, they're not in it, cool. I don't need them over there. They can sit in Pokemon Home. I'm not upset. But that's the important part I want to bring up. Don't be getting upset at Gamefreak anymore. You gotta understand, there's a lot that goes into this franchise now. And they're adding more and more as they go on. I'm happy with the amount of Pokemon we got this generation, because compared to other generations, this is the most we've gotten since Generation 5. So, please, understand that these guys are working as hard as they can, and they're trying to give us a game as best they can. And when the Generation 4 remakes come out, you don't have to worry anymore. The National Dex will be in that one, because if you don't know, it was. So yeah. For me, excluding any of the controversies with this game, and just with the flaws that line up, I believe this game is a 7 out of 10. It could easily go up to an 8, but I would say 7 right now, just because there are very small but irritating nitpicks that build up over time. The voice acting was one of them, and the fact that the game was too predictable. If it wasn't there, it would have been fine. Also, the fact that the endgame content really didn't have a way for me to come back. But I do love the fact that you have a loophole if you want to play the game again. And I want to mention this right now. If you do want to replay this game, New Game Plus does not exist, but you can play it on a new account. Until Pokemon Home comes out, though, this could be an easy factor that could hurt the game. Because if Pokemon Home does not allow you to transfer those Pokemon over there, then this game could get hurt more, because Pokemon Home is basically your last line to play this game again. So, right now, it's doing okay, but I will mention there are details about this game that will come out later. I want to see what happens, and Gamefreak, keep kicking ass with these games. But for right now, this is Christian saying, continue being an Eon Star, we never stop going.